We will now be hearing motion 8. We've also been asked for clarification about when speaker slip submission deadlines will be. The deadline for submission for motion 6 and now the first 3 motions of part 2 will be 20 past 1. So you have till 20 past 1 to submit your speaker slips for motion 6 and the first 3 motions of part 2. Okay.
Thanks, Brocker. So for motion 8, can you please make sure you're down at the front if you're planning to speak? And we have Joseph Kendall from South Thames proposing the motion, and he's the first-time speaker.
So, hello, I'm Joe. I don't think I need to tell all of you here about what the current state of training numbers is like. We all know friends affected by it if it hasn't been you yourself. My best friend worked tirelessly through the pandemic in ITU, seeing the sickest patients. He was thrown across the country, moving house again and again. He paid thousands to sit exams with depressingly high failure rates. He was then one of the hundreds of anaesthetists who are lost every year due to a shortage of specialty training posts. Do you know where he is now? New Zealand, better paid, on a training programme, and once again, the UK has lost a fantastic doctor. This is a story I could tell thousands of times. Hard-working colleagues that worked above and beyond through the pandemic, costly exams, expensive training courses, sometimes just to get 1 extra point on a national application. They then face a non-evidence-based recruitment assessment that could be the basis of their entire decision of whether they get into a career they have spent years working towards. Many are then rejected from training places despite shortages of virtually every single specialist in the country. We are short of 1,700 radiologists. 1 in 10 consultant psychiatry posts are currently underfilled. By 2030, we will be short of 8,800 GPs. I could go on for all specialities in this room. What was the answer to this by Health Education England? They gave us 900 training places more. This is a drop in the ocean to what we require. We need more specialists. We have thousands of doctors waiting to train to be those specialists. It's a travesty that no obvious solution of more training places has not been made. The BMA needs to stand strong and it needs to fight for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kendall. Can we have Olivia Ray, who's from Yorkshire, speaking against the motion, and they are a first-time speaker.
Hi, my name's Liv, I'm an F2 and I work in Sheffield. Before I say my part and say which bits of this I'm speaking against, I just want to give you each a few seconds to remember the names and the faces of your colleagues, your team members, your best mates who aren't in a training programme, maybe who are currently doing an F3, an F4. If you need a reminder, maybe Instagram, Facebook, a nice picture on an Australian beach, a lush New Zealand Green Valley might just give you that reminder you need. So basically, that's my point, right? When we look at part 1 of this motion, where it says increasing specialty posts in line with the number of foundation training places, I just don't think this goes far enough. I think it ignores all of those who are doing F3s and F4s, who have put their time in and done F1 and F2. I think it ignores all of those who are stuck in the bottleneck between IMT and higher medical specialties, in the bottleneck between CST and between higher surgical training, and I think it ignores all those who have trained abroad and want to come and work in the UK. Maybe, and I don't know, maybe it's a radical idea, we could just lobby NHSE or whoever the body now is to increase the number of training posts within those specialties, the number of doctors we actually need, as opposed to the number of doctors that we're putting into foundation training right now. I don't know. Anyway, I think part 1 isn't needed. We've already voted through a motion earlier today, and I quote, to create more training numbers at all levels. That is what we need. I think the voting for part 1 would actually limit the amount of work that the JDC could do, and to just the number of foundation places. I think we need to do more than this. I think we need to go further than this. I wholeheartedly agree with this motion. I just think we need to go a step further than limiting it to the number of foundation places. Thank you.
Thanks, Olivia. We have had a point of information, so James, would you like to come up to the lectern?
Hello, thanks. I'd just like to, there are a number of training programs and locations where we are far too late for this. I am a histopathology trainee, and we cannot increase training numbers within our program without severely adversely affecting training, because there are not enough consultants already to train the people that we've got. We are at maximum we can take.
Speech.
Sorry. Well, it's a fact. Yeah.
Could we have Alexander Chadwick, who's from UK JDC and is in the green room online?
Hello again. So I think I'm supporting this motion because the political discourse for years and years has been increasing the number of medical school places to address NHS workforce crises. As a professional association and a trade union, we need to actually educate the public and lobby the government to address the root cause of medical workforce crises in the NHS, and that can only be achieved by having a sensible policy for training for postgraduate medical training. So I fully support this motion, and this will actually address the workforce crises. In conversations at the picket lines of the general public, a lot of them are in absolute shock that junior doctors are not being trained to provide consultants for the NHS at an appropriate level to meet future needs, and I think that this motion will address that need for educating the public and lobbying government.
Thank you, Dr. Chadwick. Can we have Mike Kemp speaking against parts 1 and 3?
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief because James has already half made my point. But essentially, many training programs can't increase posts that quickly. The other thing is that actually, if you think about it, if you increase foundation posts, you have to think, actually, it's a couple of years before they need a specialty training post. You don't need to increase the higher specialty training post the year you increase foundation posts for those foundation trainees. There is a lead-up time to them reaching that point. Part 1 doesn't give that lassitude. As you've heard from the other speaker, actually, we've already passed a part that says that. I would either take 1 as a reference or let it fall, because I don't think it adds anything to the policy book beyond what we've already passed. As for part 3, one of the challenges, so I'm the chair of Less Than Full-Time Forum. A less than full-time trainee still needs a supervisor, and supervising a less than full-time trainee is as much work as supervising a non-less than full-time trainee. As you've heard, we don't have enough supervisors. The pensions crisis has caused all manner of problems with senior consultants retiring early, and that means that there aren't enough people in supervision roles. If we immediately flip to a full-time equivalent basis, you'd have a massive expansion in the number of posts without enough supervisors to be able to adequately train these people. So again, with 3, great premise, completely agree with you, but I think it would have to be a phased approach so that you can recruit the new supervisors. So I think in that respect, I would probably take that as a reference as well. But the rest of the motion, I agree with it. It's just that those technically would be quite challenging to implement as a kind of immediate approach. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. We'd like to call speaker 4. Can I have Kieran Scott from the East of England, who has a motion in the bracket?
Hello, I've spoken before, haven't I? So I'm Kieran. I am an anaesthetic trainee who is caught in the bottleneck, and having sat on JDC exec last year, have an awareness of what's going on. This motion, and I take the points that there are certain aspects that is less than ideal, is the start. I think there are lots of issues going on, and it's a problem with workforce planning that's been going on for years. It has been made worse, catastrophically, by the fact that there is not enough funding for HEE, and they've been trying to manipulate the figures to give as many people jobs as possible. That's led in times where we are now, where we are at a point where we're trying to redistribute training numbers without actually increasing them. We're led to a point that I've now lost my train of thought. What that means is that we've got ourselves in a crisis across the entire medical field where our workforce is not working. And we need to look at it from all fronts, from medical school all the way up to consultant, to be able to, and this is just the start of that point of view.
Thanks, Dr. Scott. Can we have Kira Vincent from East Midlands speaking against the motion?
Chair, Conference. Whilst I agree with the aims of this motion, unfortunately the STEM's asking the BMA to lobby the wrong people. The key stakeholder here is the government, and specifically the Treasury. They hold the purse strings, and they decide how many funded places there are for medical students, how many foundation posts there are, and how many specialty training posts there are. The education bodies merely get told how many posts they have, and this is the money that you have. They don't make the ultimate decision on this. It's already JDC policy to ask the education bodies to increase training numbers. We've been asking them for several years, and the answer is always, yeah, we would love to. Go speak to the Treasury, please. There's also now the issue that we don't really have a statutory education body in England anymore since the merger with NHS E&I. If we want action on the number of training posts, we need to direct our efforts at the right people. I'd suggest taking the STEM as a reference so we don't tie next year's JDC to lobby the wrong people again. Thank you.
Thanks, Kira. And we're going to have another speaker 4. We have Shivam Sharma from West Mids, who also has a motion in the bracket.
Hello everyone, it's Shiv from West Midlands. So I just want to reiterate how important it is we do tackle this issue. The current recruitment system is absolutely broken, and we've heard stories again. 350 anaesthetists who didn't get a place this year. I have a friend actually who didn't get to anaesthetics 3 years, did GP and absolutely hates GP, and now has just left medicine. So we have a big retention recruitment crisis, and some of the unfortunate things are that people end up picking professions they don't want to do because of such increased competition. And the other thing is that people end up having to move locations because there's just such a lack of training posts that they're uprooting their lives, the lives of their families. And again, that just leads to, again, a loss of doctors, burnout as well. I just want to address some of the other points that people have made. I think some people have said that we should take this in reference. I'm not so sure about that. I think the main thing is that this is a step in the right direction, this motion, and while there's more things that need to be done, I do think we should push this still. And I think the other thing is that the education bodies, they do have some power. While I don't disagree that we should be lobbying the government as well, I do think the Royal Colleges and the education bodies do have some power and then can lobby the government after. So we still should be putting our political capital or our pressure on the education bodies to follow through on this, because ultimately it is also their responsibility to train us and provide adequate training programs. So again, I urge you to support this motion and vote yes. Thanks.
Thanks. We have had a point of information from Samuel Smith. Are you in the room, Samuel?
Yes. Hi.
You want to come to the lectern?
I can just do it from here if that's okay. It's just to point out that in the STEM we would actually be lobbying the Royal Colleges. And I know that's very in keeping with the coronation, but we probably should address that. Thank you.
Don't worry, the typo will be corrected. So we're going to have our right of reply. Can Joseph come back to the lectern? Let me know if you are willing to take essentially the whole motion as a reference, because there's a call for taking the STEM as a reference, in which case the parts wouldn't be able to stand on their own. And if you want to take parts 1 or 3 as a reference as well. Come to the lectern, because you have a right to reply anyway.
Sorry, first time, so I'm just going to try and make this make sense for me. So I wanted to take a little bit of those things and have reply to what each of the people has kind of said. So part 1, I take things on board, but I don't want to watch another crisis develop. On the Education and Training Committee this year, I want something that I can concretely argue. Foundation places are going up, speciality training and core training, such as GP training, needs to go up as well. And this is just another thing we can argue. So having another policy is not going to take away from having the policy. It's just another thing we can use. And this will also help those that are, as mentioned, ignored at F3 and F4. If we increase the number of core speciality and speciality training places, that will mean that we've got spaces for those people as well. And part two as well, I'm not trying to ignore the people at IMT who have finished IMT and who might be taking a couple of years out. That's why I want to address those bottlenecks specifically in medicine and anesthesia and surgery. So part three, I would be happy for that to be taken as a reference, as I think it might take a while to sort out, but I do think that's something that we need to work towards. I think we shouldn't just accept that, okay, we don't have enough supervisors, therefore we can't do this. We need to push, and we need to push strong. Sorry?
Sentence.
Rubbish. Sorry. Basically we need to push forward, otherwise we'll always be in this endless cycle of less specialists, less training, less specialists, less training. Thank you.
Okay, conference, we will be taking this in parts. So we're shortly going to move to the vote for part one, which is ensure increases in specialty posts available each year in line with the number of foundation programme posts offered. So if we can open the vote for part one. And to clarify, that is substantive, because Joseph wasn't happy to take it as a reference. Those online, if you have any difficulty voting, please make sure you keep refreshing your page. So voting's closed. We'll get the results up in a sec. Part one is passed. We'll move to vote for part two. So this is review and minimise the existing bottlenecks at higher specialty entry levels in uncoupled training programmes. Again, it's substantive. Little fact for you, there are 6 species of booby, including the blue-footed booby. Voting's closed. We'll get the results up. Overwhelmingly passed. So we're going to move to part three. This is as a reference. And this is redefine measurement of training numbers from headcount to full-time equivalent. Redefine measurement of training numbers from headcount to full-time equivalent as a reference. A sweet fact for you, penguins make life by presenting a rock to the feet of their male. So voting's closed. We'll get the results for part three. Also passed as a reference. Opening the vote for part four. Ensure that no increases in medical school places are made before guarantees are made to increase the ratio of training numbers per specialty. Security workers in London secured a 22% pay rise after announcing strikes last Christmas. Voting's closed for part 4. Let's wait on those results. Also passed. Moving on to part 5. Explain how current recruitment processes have been evaluated, including equality impact assessments, and chosen as fit for purpose. Don't forget to refresh your screen if you're having any issues online. Hummingbirds are the only birds that can fly backwards. Voting's closed for part 4. Part 5, sorry, so we're just waiting on the result. Overwhelmingly passed, so we're going to move to part 6, which is ensure all national recruitment processes are subject to external review by relevant stakeholders in light of previous equality, diversity and inclusion failings. So voting's closed. We'll get the results in a second. Again, overwhelmingly passed. So final part to vote on now, guys. Part 7. Ensure the voices of current trainees are given equal weight as stakeholders in decisions regarding alterations to the recruitment process. I'm sure you'll all be pleased to know as well that we aren't going to deduct time from your lunch, so we'll ask you to come back at 1:30 rather than 20 past. Apparently kangaroos can't fart. Part 7 has passed. So the whole motion has passed with part 3 as a reference.
Those online and in the room, please be back for 1:30